There's Aristo. Good afternoon. 4:44 your time.
Good morning, Ron. What's it over there? 9:44?
Yes, and you called me. I was going to call you, and it hadn't quite changed to 44 on my clock. So.
Oh, it changed here. We're probably about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, my clock actually on the wall runs. It gets off. I have to reset it every week or two because I don't know. I can't remember now if it's fast or slow. I think it's slow, but I'm not sure. I know it doesn't keep exact time with my computer.
Well, I figured since I was the one with the 444 here, I should take the initiative and make sure it doesn't. Because this is the first time that we really begin a video with this kind of time accuracy.
Yeah, and I don't even know. On Skype, when we do it on Skype, I don't think you can even see the clock behind me.
No, you can't. I can't see it.
No, and neither can anybody else. It's not on my image. But anyway, you know, this is the third interview that I've done since 5 a.m. yesterday morning when I did the one with Mr. Sino. I did one last night, and now I'm doing this one, and then I'm doing another one on Sunday. So there's going to be 4 days in a row that I have conversations with people instead of me talking.
That's pretty cool. In fact, this time, I think, given all of the topics, I listened to Mr. Sino's conversation a little bit, but it's something that requires more time and concentration to really be able to get what's talked about.
One individual said he's listened to it 3 times already, and each time he picks up more things than he did before, but most people don't have that much time or patience.
No, it's unfortunately, or maybe it's a good thing. We live in a society of convenience, so anybody who wants to communicate needs to take that into account. And in fact, convenience trumps quality. I mean, quality in the video is a function of the convenience, but I mean the quality of the topic and the depth of the topic comes second to convenience. I mean, if I have a sharp title, I get more people to listen to this and stuff. But so in the future, it can be, because this is a first contact thing. I mean, I think it would serve Mr. Sino, like somebody suggested, to let the conversation go on in Indonesian from his end, and then later translate it, have somebody listen to it and provide a translation. Or even redo the video with you as a translation. But it's good to hear Mr. Sino's voice and get the energy from that end and all of that. But
well, I hope we've laid to rest the idea that he's not a real human being. He's just a channeled entity that some of the people in the OPPT have been spreading, primarily D.
You're never going to lay that to rest. If somebody really wants to push that kind of point, I mean, they can say that, how do I know this was Mr. Sino and not somebody else? How do I know it wasn't, you know? I mean, you can always object to something, but the point is that there is somebody who is Indonesian, who obviously does not speak English well, who claims to be Mr. Sino or some group of people. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's close enough as far as I'm concerned. And the thing is that this is the weirdest thing, because we're talking about a pragmatic financial situation here. Economics, law. What the hell do channel entities? I mean, this is the first time I hear, if we were talking about this 20 years ago and somebody would say, well, a channeled entity is proposing changes in the world, you know, people would think it was not just crazy, demonic, I don't know what. It's just completely...
It is crazy.
I mean, you know, we accept so many things. On the one hand, people ask for proof whenever something doesn't click with the accepted line of propaganda. And on the other hand, they ask for proof in a way that's not realistic. You don't care about who Mr. Sino is. I mean, really, to tell the truth, the Queen Elizabeth is also of the line of David. That's what she says, because she comes from the Merovingians. And the Merovingians were supposed to be descended from the children of Jesus and Magdalene. And he's from the line of David, etc., etc. Kings have used this for a long time. In Indonesia especially, every ruler is from a lineage, from a divine type original, who was the protector of the people. What it points to is an obligation. I mean, when somebody says that responsibly, I am from the line of so-and-so, what they're telling you is that, look, I am aware of the responsibility that I carry because of my position. My position is symbolic, and it tells you that, well, my ancestor was like this, so I understand my responsibilities. I have certain resources, and you know, you could have somebody off the street with the same resources. If they're not aware of the responsibility they carry in terms of how they intend to use those resources, then they are not trustworthy. So these things are not in order to tell us that, well, I have, you know, I'm from this guy, so I have the right to boss you or tell you what to do, or I'm always right. No.
You know, Aristo, I've talked to a few of the people now that spent time with Mr. Sino there in Indonesia. And one of the things that I hear again and again is they've never heard him tell anyone what to do. He does not issue orders. And somebody suggested to me that I should get people to translate what he's saying, or put it, or put the whole context into and print it out, which is actually a good idea. But it was said in such a way that you can just, now that you're one of the leaders, you can just tell people to do it. And Mr. Sino himself does not give orders. He doesn't come across as the boss. And well, even when I was in management positions, I was always reluctant to order people around. I wanted to be perceived as someone that was eliciting cooperation, not someone that was commanding some type of service to myself.
You know, that was the original position of the emperors of the Far East. The emperor basically is supposed to be a representation of heaven. And this is true in the Near East, the Middle East, the West. What it means basically, anointed. Anointing means the descent of oil. Oil is related to, it's olive oil, usually. And olive oil is connected to the olive tree, the symbol not only of peace, but of completion. Athletes in the Olympics wore olive branches because they were complete, perfected beings who competed and basically proved that they were physically harmonious and balanced and all of this through all of the games. This was in order to say we don't have to have a conflict. We can just do these games, we can play, and through this play, we see the relation of where we each are in relation to each other. The ones who lose benefit just as much as the ones who win because they see how much they have to go. They have a comparison with other people. It gives them an added dimension with a comparison between themselves. It's not about dog eat dog. Because you consider this, if we can create an environment that transcends the need to survive with limited resources where only a few can get something and everybody else is left in the lurch, then the whole competition thing goes to a different level. Because that's why I went into science in the first place. I mean, besides curiosity, I figured, look, man, you can have free energy, and you can solve all these problems of misery, and then people can really compete, as they should in games with sportsmanship, so to speak. In a way, basically, where competition is a reference of self-perfection. When you go and do something, when people climb mountains, when they strive, they compete against themselves. That's the English phrase, but they're not competing against themselves. They're raising their own standards of being and doing. That's the whole thing. And that requires motivation. And the difficult thing is that we have been conditioned to repress that motivation. So the only way we're going to do this is if our survival is threatened, because that's what's happened all along. So it's really interesting to see that on the one hand, people seem to be, don't tell me what to do, and on the other hand, you have to tell us what to do. You know, it's like and basically it's denial, because on the one hand, and I'm not saying it's the same people, they're different people, but if you look at the whole group, They each represent a different facet. If all of the people that said, don't tell us what to do, all of a sudden flip their opinions, then the other side would feel pressure to, oh no, now what? You know, the whole point is to keep things buzzing so nothing gets done. Really, deep down, we are afraid of change. And that's why the ruler who is the true representative of heaven, meaning of the ideal, is one that allows everybody to do what they need to do. All they do is point out a few things. All they do is make a few suggestions in such a way that people are inspired to take them into account in their own process. Everybody in society, you don't have managers over everybody's head you only do that when people don't do what they want to do. When people aren't following their hearts or not following their natural inclinations. Otherwise, all people need is skill. They learn something so they don't make mistakes, and then they go about doing it. Managers are there to coordinate different facets of activity that usually don't have direct contact with each other. They're like intersections of activity in order traffic lights. Basically that's the only kind of cop you need in a normal society, the traffic cop. Because people basically are too busy doing their own thing to consider what's going on around them all the time. So somebody's there to say, just in case, we're going to keep things regulated. In the same manner, you have somebody playing a drum, and people are basically dancing. Each person is doing their own variation on the dance theme, but the rhythm keeps them from bumping into each other. It keeps everything... See, but the thing is, we're afraid of that because we have been told and conditioned. People still don't get how insidious conditioning is, in my opinion. So, and at the same time, when you have a society that's egalitarian, but there are still problems, some people want to take shortcuts. And eventually there are people, but if you have an egalitarian society that's irresponsible, which means it's not really egalitarian, those who suffer are going to be tempted into psychopathy. They're going to start saying, well, if I can't get, if things don't work out for me, it's like that whole thing with false democracy. Ancient Greek democracy that everything is modeled on wasn't democracy. There were 10,000 men in Athens, or 30,000, who had property. These were wealthy men, and they were all over 30. Those are the ones that voted. Everybody else was a child, a slave, or impoverished, or a barbarian. So you were either a foreigner, a slave, a woman, or a child, and everybody else was a free man. And they called that democracy because the demos is the group of citizens who fit into that free man category. So when they're using the word democracy, they're and republic is basically the same thing. The public that has the rights and all of this is for the public. But who is the public? Is it everybody? So names and words like neutrality confuse us. Well, at the same time, all we have to do is really look into our hearts and look to our common sense. There is common sense. Mr. Sino doesn't have to tell people what to do. He's already chosen the people for what they know how to do. He looks to people...
it's interesting that I keep hearing he doesn't see himself as having chosen anyone. He sees it as God chose these people, and they're going to go through their shit... Sometimes, figuratively, I was going to say sometimes literally, but that's not true. But anyway, they have to learn, he gives them titles, and sometimes the titles go to their head, and then they've got to work out all these issues that come up because other people don't like to be told what to do.
Well, whatever the case, he still acts as the channel for the choice. He expresses something and says, okay, I feel, because... That's what a mystic would do, for example. Even though there are many people who have convincingly deceived other people by playing the role of a mystic. New Agers do it all the time. The gurus have done it. The preachers have done it. So if Mr. Sino is true, he basically challenges people, or should challenge people, to be able to get beyond this. If I was Mr. Sino, I would allow every indication that I was a deceiver, and every circumstantial indication. I wouldn't try to prove that I wasn't a deceiver outside of my own spontaneity and my own sincerity. I wouldn't go out of my way to protest too much that I'm innocent, because that's up to everybody else. I mean, if we're so fucked up that we can't tell the difference, we're always going to be deceived. Somebody's going to come around. Or we're going to take a sincere person and crucify them like we've always done. So that is one thing that we do need to learn. It's discernment. And we need to get beyond word games. Words like neutrality and duality and monism. I mean, come on. Or experiment even. I mean, if this is an experiment, okay, when it's over, are we all going to go back to source? Are we going to go back to monism and be one? I'm not. I'm hanging out. You know, the definition of an experiment is finite. It ends, you come to conclusions, and you go about your business. This is a choice. This is an evolutionary continuation of natural process, of meaningful process and meaningful existence. So, and even the Garden of Eden story, if you take the whole thing of Solomon and take it back to the biblical roots, I was looking at that the other day, and essentially the proverbial Elohim, the forces of evolution, the masters of evolution, that's or the masters of the sacred, as one would actually the interpretation would be the first authorities that fertilize life in all its branching possibilities. So they are fertilizers of life, and the garden itself is is actually a menagerie. The word that would be more appropriate would be zoo. And it is a place of restricted possibilities that stimulates infinite potential. And the dictate to say you can get the fruit of all the trees, because trees are like nervous systems. When you look at the word tree, it is basically an upright, branching divergence. It's a network. So there are systems of networks of possibility. And Elohim said to Adam, this manifestation, that you can explore all of these possibilities except that one. The tree of life is actually interpreted as the tree of living beings. Literally, beings with skin and feet, walking, and beings with skin. So, to be in the Garden of Eden, which is a realm of etheric beings that can actually explore these possibilities and manifest as a material being, would make you a god. The transition of sustaining knowledge of good and evil. The tree of good and evil is basically the human nervous system or human DNA. It's basically the ability to discern and to fall into craft. When the gods came and mined gold, the gold was figurative. It wasn't literal. The gold of the earth is the solution of the quandary of good and evil. And thus, many rabbis actually, I heard this online too, that, well, it was a setup. Man did not transgress in the Garden of Eden. They were set up in order to make that choice and get out and proceed in doing something. This is how man mines the gold from the planet, by being exiled into the planet, wearing animal skins, eating of the tree of life, but not in the Garden of Eden, not in the zoo. You don't want to unleash a human being that's evolving in this manner in that kind of closed environment. It's like putting an adult with a gun in a playpen or a kindergarten. You know, you want to take them out of the nursery and put them where they can grow. So Elohim themselves actually clothed Adam and Eve with animal skins and put them out, as we said, and they put this entity called a cherubim, which is basically the hand of God. Literally, it's the hand of consciousness that fertilizes manifestation, that fertilizes our house. It's a protector. It's not an aggressor. So, from a mystical standpoint, we don't have these evil gods that wanted human beings to get their gold for them. Basically, this facilitated anointing. Anointing is when the gods and human beings and manifest human beings can become one. Initially, the first kings were mystics. Of course they were. When you become enlightened, all of a sudden you look around and you're able to give suggestions to people. Hey, you can do this a lot better. Hey, why don't, hey, I think there's danger over there, and I have the power to protect you from the inside and all of this. Of course people are going to turn to you and say, hey, you're actually different than the rest of us, and you're really making our lives better. I think you should be our consultant. This was what kings were all about. And you can even be our healer if you like. And it's like, well, I'm too busy. There's somebody else who can do that job, and I can do this job, etc., etc. Eventually, however, there was a rush. People wanted more, and of course there was progress and evolution and more solutions, and there was more demand. The psychopaths are right. The people caused the problem by wanting things faster and more and not dealing with their issues, so there were shortcuts. Instead of dealing with the shadow, people went straight to the solutions that covered up the shadow. And we had experiences like Atlantis. And then other people came to the populace and said, hey man, that guy's telling you to face all this crap. I'm going to give you a free ride. Why don't you listen to me? And of course the people listened to that person. And then they were screwed from then on. Because each time the politician, the leader, the thisser, the thatter, they come and they promise free rides. And that's what screws us each time. And then these days, they're even taking that and twisting it and saying you're all going to hell. We're going to kill you all. Or, yeah, of course we have to kill 99% of you. There's no free ride. So they're defining everything. So I say, crap, forget about that. Forget about these issues. Mr. Sino may be a Muslim in religion. His spirituality seems to be shamanic in its basis, and there's many Hindu elements, but he's also a Taoist, I think.
Well, I don't know. I know it's a Muslim country, and I know there's a lot of Muslims that are part of the delegation there, as far as I can tell. However, it strikes me that one of the people that got up one morning and entered a meeting that Mr. Sino was in, the call to prayer was going on outside, and all the Muslims were responding to that, and Mr. Sino and his group there were there watching on a laptop computer my video for that day. And that was shared with me from a first-hand experience of someone that was right there in the room with them.
Exactly. I mean, that's the difference between a spiritual person and a religious person. The religious person goes for the ritual. But at the same time, see, the psychopathic Illuminati types can mimic anything. So we're back down to feeling into the situation. And we're back down to feeling at such depths that they're going to challenge us. If you feel something and get an immediate response, oh, that person's good or that person's bad, chances are that you're viewing the surface of the situation, a surface behavior that triggers a response. At a deeper level, it's usually challenging. There's usually uncertainty. And if Mr. Sino challenges that, says, look, you got to work through your shit here, because you can't see me, and you can't see the world, and you can't see yourself until you do that. Your true discernment is the gold underneath all the crap that you're facing right now. So the guy seems to have a Taoistic sense, which is what Neil Dyer and Steve Hart, what they talk about, this kind of sense of non-involvement. But it's apparent non-involvement. It's really very deep involvement, because when you identify with the system in which you're involved, you don't need to slap your hand to make it move to do something. You're not even making your hand move to do something. You are moving. By communicating the necessity of the situation, by revealing a situation in any shape or form, by allowing the inspiration to flow from one point to another and being a facilitator. That's what a ruler is. By being a facilitator, things fall into place. People know what to do. You know what to do. You don't have somebody telling you, look, I have to talk about this topic or that topic. These are the topics that flow naturally, and they've attracted somebody like Mr. Sino, and they've made the establishment move against you in some way or led to a series of events that challenged you. All of these things are working in a certain state of harmony. When we talk about purpose, it's not a linear thing, in my opinion. It's not like, well, there's a reason for this, which means there's a goal over there from here. Instead, we can look at things, there's a rhythm, a harmony, and a process, a dynamic that's working. The purpose is realized at every single moment, because every moment is an opportunity. Even if we reject that moment, that rejection is something that needs to happen, because we desire it. The only real reason for anything is our true desire, in my opinion. Anyway, this topic is going all over the place.
No, I think it's right on track.
in terms of logical argument, what's he talking about today, you know? But what I wanted to use as a title was that canon law is not a bridge. Common law is not the goal. Common law is the bridge. Not any one of these three or whatever. But I believe that common law is something to which we can return to. It's not a new thing. It's always been there, what you call natural law. So that is our natural bridge. If we have to backtrack and find it, you know, but the thing is we don't know how to walk that bridge. As natural and common sense as it, and I believe we need to admit this to ourselves. Because there's a lot of people are viewing you, people like Neil and especially Steve are viewing you as resisting. And I don't see you resisting anything. What are you resisting? You know, yes, you talk about resisting the psychopaths and all of this, but I'm just seeing you going along a certain path that's very, very creative. In fact, in your own way, or anybody who talks about applying law, it's like this. If you have these canon law people, now one person says, like you said, well, they should slap us around and treat us like crap until we know better. But once we start standing up for ourselves, you got somebody like Neil saying, you shouldn't do that. You should go back to being a victim or not responding. Or maybe you should just attack people weaker than you to teach them a lesson. Don't go to your masters and challenge them. Challenging is not resistance. It's moving along the path that you want to move. They're the ones that are resisting us. It's the psychopaths that are resisting. We're being true to ourselves. Once you are, and nobody can tell you what that is, and you can't prove it to anybody, and you shouldn't prove it to anybody. If you are true to yourself, you're going to learn harsh lessons if you're not, of course. But it's a fine-tuning, and even good intentions may pave the road to hell. But you will see hell on the horizon and turn around, and you know, you have that opportunity. Everybody does. And this is what's going on. So we reach a point where we are not resisting. We are experiencing the resistance that's coming against us moving along our natural path. Maybe Neil is the one that's resisting, or Steve is the one that's resisting. Why are they so upset at passion? Why are they so upset at somebody wanting things to be balanced? Nobody is calling for an armed revolution or hurting people. Law is a misunderstood term. It is really a set of agreements with other people, and they're formalized agreements. So there's no way anybody can be exempt, because basically rulers who say they're exempt disagree with everybody else. And thus they refuse to be in society. How can they tell us what to do when they refuse to be in society and part of it and agree with anybody about anything? So it's basically a matter of somebody who's coming in and trying to conquer. So forget about canon law and maritime law. I just put these all under the word tyranny, period. You know, and forget about neutrality. And I believe, one more thing, if Mr. Sino is really who he says he is and how you describe him, then he's really giving people, that's why I believe I would do the same thing. I wouldn't go out of my way to be formal and present a face and whatever. Let people feel the essence of the situation. The right people are going to be attracted to it, and eventually it's going to move. The guy can indeed be an agent of the Chinese who knows what, but he can also be sincere. And that dilemma, that lack of guarantee from the outside, is our own test and our own opportunity to discover the way to find solutions. So, okay.
Thank you. That's 30 minutes right there.
And of course, if you feel like you have something to add, I'm sorry if I.
No, I was going to say something, but I'm going to, after I finish all of these interviews, 4 of them in a row, 4 days in a row, I will be able to go back and give my overview of everything that happened in those 4. So, and maybe that might take a couple of days. Who knows? Or more.
Well, it's a significant event in my opinion. I mean, the fact that you actually and people like Santos Bonacci and all the other ones and the old PPT, like we said, it's like a relay situation, not a race, but somebody goes along a certain way and they pass on the relay to somebody else and they do what they can. Let's get the ball rolling, not in a specific, or we have to do this. You don't want people to tell you what to do. I don't want people to tell me what to do. I hate telling people what to do myself. I just like to express what I like to do and what I like to see and what I like to feel. It isn't selfish. It's basically respectful of other people's ability and right to do the same. So the ball is rolling, in my opinion, and these are exciting times. I'm very interested to see how all of this plays out.
Me too. And I'm just on the ride.
So are they. Everybody.
All right, Aristo. Well, thank you again. I think that was a beautiful discussion. And again, what was your title? Common law, canon law.
But it has nothing to do with the topic, though. But I was going to use that as the topic, but we've got.
Well, I'll include it in the blurb at least. We'll see how it comes out when I listen again. So thank you very much, and we'll talk again next week.
Of course.